Hello cats, welcome back to another episode of Chat About That. I'm your host Bella, and in this episode I'm going to be chatting all about WandaVision. Before I chat about WandaVision, I just want to say that last night Taylor Swift won a Grammy for Album of the Year for Folklore, and although it's not her first Grammy, it's actually her 11th Grammy. I'm very excited about it, and I just wanted to tell you guys because my last episode was all about Taylor Swift and her re-recordings, and I'm just really proud that she won a Grammy because she actually hasn't won a Grammy since 1989. Not the year 1989, but the album 1989. That was the last time she won Grammys. Reputation was only nominated for one Grammy, and Lover was only nominated for a couple of Grammys. She didn't actually attend the Grammys for either of those years, but she's back, and she attended the Grammys last night, and she won Album of the Year for Folklore, and I'm very excited. And her performance was really amazing. So if you haven't seen her performance or anybody else's performance from the Grammys, I highly recommend that you check them out. They're all on YouTube right now. And I think there were a lot of really good performances. Even the people that I didn't really know, I still thought that they did a really good job. I thought it was really fun. So if you haven't checked out the performances from the Grammys, I highly recommend that you do. Now getting into WandaVision, I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I really enjoyed WandaVision. Overall, I think it was a phenomenal show, and obviously I'm a huge Marvel fan, and this was the first Disney Plus Marvel show, and it exceeded my expectations. It really did. I know some people thought that the ending wasn't as spectacular as it could have been, but I'll get to that in a bit. I did think that the ending was good, and it definitely sets up for future films. So I'm not going to give an entire in-depth, detailed analysis of the show as a whole, and I'm not going to go into detail about every single episode because we would be here forever, but I'm going to give an overview of the plot, some Easter eggs that they put in there, what it means for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU, which that's how I'll be calling it, what it means for the MCU as a whole, and how are they going to move forward based on what happened in this series. Also, as a warning, obviously this episode is going to contain spoilers for WandaVision, so if you haven't seen it or you haven't finished it, stop right here. I'm going to start talking about it in a bit, and it's also going to contain spoilers for the MCU as a whole, so if you haven't finished watching the Marvel movies or you haven't seen them and you don't want spoilers, just stop right here. I'm going to start right off the bat with a big spoiler. So yeah, just want to let you know that. So this series, although the first 3 episodes do seem like they are taking place in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s inside of a sitcom world, this show actually takes place just about a week or so after Tony Stark's funeral. Again, I did tell you that this is going to immediately start off with spoilers, so I warned you. So yes, this is just really quickly after Tony Stark's funeral and the events of Endgame, and Wanda is still grieving. She's still, navigating the world without Vision because Thanos in the Infinity War took the Mind Stone out of Vision and he died. Well, died as much as a robot can. Wanda, in her last moments in Infinity War, she saw her lover, Vision, die. And then she was swept away, and then she came back, and although it was 5 years when they were in the blip, that's what, after Thanos snapped his fingers, people disappeared, they call it the blip. Even though she thinks it was only, minutes or so, it was 5 years. And she had to come back, immediately start fighting, and she almost killed Thanos. I will say that, and they did mention this in WandaVision, but Thanos was almost killed by Wanda, like single-handedly. Wanda almost killed him. So obviously, that just shows how powerful she is. But yeah, she had to fight Thanos, fight everyone, and then go to Tony Stark's funeral, and then finally have time to grieve. So she's going through a lot. So like I said, the first 3 episodes are pretty strictly sitcoms. And from the trailer that they revealed, I think it was last year, the trailer showcased this sitcom world. Early sitcoms from the 50s all the way through like the 90s. And as viewers watching this trailer, you're kind of confused. You're not really sure if this is actually in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or if this is like some dream or if Wanda's doing this. You're not really sure what's going on. And in the first couple of episodes, it's pretty pretty straightforward sitcoms, but there are little like weird things that happen. In the first episode, Wanda and Vision are having a dinner party for Vision's boss, and all of a sudden Vision's boss starts choking, and his wife pretty much starts glitching out and is like repeating herself over and over again, and Wanda's like, Vision, help him, and Vision like uses his powers and helps him. Obviously that's weird, super out of character, and then it just goes back to normal. Super strange. Episode 2, Wanda hears on the radio somebody calling out to her, and then all of a sudden it's just back to normal. Episode 3, that's when it gets a little crazy, because in episode 3, Wanda gives birth. Yes, she magically becomes pregnant at the end of episode 2, magically becomes pregnant, and then magically has twins, Billy and Tommy. And at the end of the episode, her friend Geraldine, aka Monica Rambeau, who I'll talk about in a minute, Wanda's talking about how she had a brother, and Monica says, oh my god, he was killed by Ultron, he was Pietro, and Wanda's like, how the hell do you know that? Like, who are you? You don't belong here. And she literally just like yeets her out of the room. Well, you don't see that until later, but pretty much at that point you don't know that, but she like yeets Monica out of the room. But in the episode, it just cuts to something different, and Monica's just gone, and she tells Vision that she had to leave or whatever. So you're like, what the hell is going on? And then you see from the perspective of the outside world, Monica just shows up in this field, and you're like, finally, we're gonna get into the outside world. So starting from episode 4, we see the outside world, and there's an organization called SWORD, which Sword and Shield, it kind of goes together. If you don't know, Shield is the, pretty much the, I don't want to say X-Files, but they're kind of like the FBI. They're like the government organization that deals with superheroes in the MCU. And so SWORD is led by this man called Tyler Haywood, who we do not stand him. And he recruits Monica Rambeau, who is the daughter of Maria Rambeau, who is the woman who was featured in Captain Marvel. She was Carol Danvers' friend, and Monica Rambeau is in Captain Marvel, but she's a young girl, and obviously that takes place in the 90s, so she's grown up, so it makes sense. The actress who plays Monica is the right age for the timeline and everything, so it makes sense. But basically, she's just learned that her mother, Maria Rambeau, has passed away, and Monica was also blipped, so when she comes back, her mom has passed away, and she's like, what the hell's going on? So she's recruited by Hayward, and she goes and helps them figure out this anomaly. They're calling it the Westview anomaly, because in Westview, New Jersey, there's this big bubble over top of the area, and they can't get in or out of it, and they don't know what's going on. And Jimmy Woo, who we do stand Jimmy Woo, he was from Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was the FBI agent who was in charge of watching Scott when he was on house arrest. So he's lit. We stan Jimmy Woo. We stan him. And so Jimmy Woo meets up with Monica Rambeau, and he's like, my friend was sucked into this place and we don't know what's going on. So basically, episode 4 is all about the outside world and SWORD trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And then Darcy Lewis comes in, who she's from the Thor films. She comes in and she, does the scientific-y stuff. Not going to go into detail. I keep saying I'm not going to go into detail, and I kind of am, but I want to talk about this. She basically does this scientific-y stuff and figures out that this sitcom is being broadcast throughout the entire world, and they see that it's Wanda and Vision, and they immediately start realizing that all the people in the show are Westview citizens that have been missing, who people don't know where they are. Now, the only resident of Westview that they don't actually identify is this woman named Agnes. Well, Agnes, quote, quote. And that's because she's not actually from Westview. She's actually a witch. Her name is Agatha Harkness, who I kind of figured out because I follow a lot of like fan accounts, and I follow New Rock Stars who do like really super in-depth analysis of Marvel and a bunch of other movies. So I will actually leave the link to New Rock Stars YouTube channel in the description, because they have done so many amazing analysis videos of so many different things. That's kind of where I get most of my information from. So if you haven't seen New Rockstars videos, I definitely recommend that you check them out. So Agnes, aka Agatha Harkness, is in every episode, and at first she's just kind of like this nosy neighbor, but then she kind of starts doing like weird things, and Vision is very skeptical of her, and Wanda is like totally oblivious. Wanda just thinks she's like the greatest person ever and is like friends with her. So in episode 5, Tommy and Billy, who are Wanda and Vision's kids, they magically grow up, and Agatha doesn't seem to really notice or give a crap about it. And Vision is like, well, we can't like use our powers. We can't, let people in the town know that like this weirdness is going on. And Wanda just doesn't really care. So episode 5 is kind of just more about Wanda and the kids and, them growing up and it being just kind of odd. But then you kind of start to get little hints here and there that her kids have superpowers. And that comes in later. So the end of episode 5, it's really interesting because Wanda is talking about how to her sons that she had a twin brother and that family is really important. And the overall theme of that episode is, family and togetherness. And at the end of the episode, she gets a knock on the door. And me and my sister at this point were like, oh my God, it's her brother, like Pietro. It's going to be him. It's going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson, who played him in the film. And it is her brother. But it's not Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's actually Evan Peters, who, if you know who Evan Peters is, he plays the version of Quicksilver in the X-Men films. So it's actually kind of like meta that he's on the show. So her brother comes to town. Episode 6 is one of my favorites. It's actually this Halloween episode, and her brother, quote, quote, is there. Wanda and Vision are wearing costumes that are reminiscent of their comic book costumes, which is really cool, and same with Pietro, and her kids are wearing similar colors to what they do in the comics. And this episode is pretty interesting because Vision is going around saying he's on neighborhood watch, but he's actually like scoping out the town, trying to figure out what the hell's going on because he is super, super skeptical of what the hell's going on in this town. So Vision finds Agnes and she's like at the end of this block, and basically Vision figures out that he is inside of a bubble and something weird is going on. Meanwhile, outside of the bubble, back at Sword, Hayward, who we hate, Hayward is basically spinning these lies that Wanda stole Vision's body from their facility, and that's how she was able to bring him back to life, which is not true. And basically, he's just like spinning all these lies, and Jimmy Woo, Darcy, and Monica just don't believe this. They think that something else is going on and they don't like Hayward, they don't trust him, and he is really dismissive of all of their theories, and they just know something else is going on. So during the episode, Wanda gets mad, something happens, and she expands this bubble, basically the bubble that's around the town. She expands it, and so a bunch of Sword employees, including Darcy, get trapped inside of this bubble. So now they are these characters that are inside of this sitcom. And episode 7 is based off of Modern Family. I will talk about the theme songs and the different sitcoms that the shows are based on in a little bit after the recap. And I also know that this recap is not short. I did say it was going to be short. I apologize. I started going on a rant and I just got into it, and this is here where we are now. So I'm almost done. But I do want to talk about some of the little Easter eggs and stuff that they put in. But so basically, Wanda is kind of falling into a depression. You see her happiness sort of decline throughout the series. And this episode really plays on Wanda's mental health. She's really depressed and her kids are, she's not really paying attention to them. Vision is off and she doesn't know where he is. And it's kind of set up as like Wanda and Vision are divorced, even though they're not. It seems like they're fighting. They're not really getting along. And so good old Agnes, aka Agatha Harkness, aka Boss Bitch. I freaking love her. She's played by Katherine Hahn, and she's absolutely hilarious. I love Agatha Harkness, even though she's evil. I love her. She tells Wanda that she can watch the kids, and Wanda's like, okay, whatever. And then Wanda, ends up realizing that she wants her kids back. She goes over to Agnes's house, and Agnes is like, oh, they might be in the basement. And then Wanda ends up in the basement, and she figures out that she's actually a witch, and Agnes is actually Agatha Harkness, and everything, starts to fall into place in that way. You learn that Agnes is actually Agatha Harkness. She's a witch. She was in the Salem witch trials, and her coven tried to kill her, and she absorbed all these powers, and she's basically trying to get the powers of the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda. And Agnes basically takes Wanda on this, I want to say vision quest, even though that's not what it is, but I'm calling it that. She basically takes her back through all of her memories and tries to figure out how Wanda got these powers. How did she create this world? And you learn, you don't learn this, but you see basically all these moments in her life that were really tragic. You see the death of her parents, her inside of the testing facility where she got her powers, and you learn that she kind of had powers before then. The rocket that crashed into her parents' house and killed them and didn't explode. That's the reason why her and Pietro were or able to survive, she actually manipulated it so it didn't go off. So she was kind of born with powers. And you see that the Infinity Stone, which gave her powers, didn't give her all of her powers. Again, she had some before. You see some moments with Vision when she's in the Avengers compound and how, he was really there for her, and he really showed love and compassion for her when she was in this dark place right after Sokovia and right after what happened in Lagos, where she, accidentally killed a bunch of people. And then you see this scene where Hayward had spinned this lie that she went into the facility and stole Vision's body. She didn't actually. He invited her there, and she saw Vision's body. She saw that they were taking his body apart, and she wanted to bury him. And Hayward said, well, we're not just going to let you, take his body or whatever. And it's really emotional for her, but she doesn't take it. She leaves, and she goes to Westview on this plot of land where Vision said that they were going to build a house. And she's so angry, she's so stricken with grief that she manifests this entire fake reality. So she did manifest this reality, and that is when Agatha realizes that she's the Scarlet Witch, Wanda's a Scarlet Witch, and that she has all these powers, and Agatha basically wants those powers back. So the finale, Jimmy Woo and Monica Rambeau and Hayward all figure out a way to get inside of the anomaly, and they basically witness this boss bitch fight between Wanda and Agatha, and Agatha's like, yo, I want my powers, you don't deserve them, and I want them back. And they have this battle, and obviously Wanda wins, and Wanda decides to take away this reality that she's had. So she puts her sons to bed, and she says goodbye to Vision, and the fake reality closes, and yeah, Wanda is just super powerful, and Hayward gets arrested, Jimmy Woo is still there, he's awesome, Monica's still there, Darcy's cool, and Wanda just goes away. Now, a lot of people thought the ending was weird in the sense that she didn't really get any consequences, she just yeeted off into the middle of nowhere, and she didn't really face any consequences. Now, I think she will. I'll get into that in a minute, but there are 2 end credit scenes that I want to talk about. Again, I'm sorry that this recap was not short at all. When I get on my rants, and I want to talk about things. We still do have a lot to talk about. So 2 end credit scenes. The one is this sword agent says, Monica, we got to talk to you. Somebody's here to see you. And the sword agent brings her into this room, and the sword agent is actually a Skrull, which if you know them from Captain Marvel, they're the green people. And they're like, somebody needs your help up in the sky. So that's setting up for either Captain Marvel 2 or for some other movie or TV show with Monica Rambeau. So I'm very excited about that. I'm also really glad that they brought the Skrulls back, because they were in, obviously, Captain Marvel. They were talked about a lot on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then they were actually in Spider-Man Far From Home. Again, spoiler, but at the end you realize that the entire time in Spider-Man Far From Home, Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Skrulls. They're not legit Skrulls. It was just Skrulls were playing them in the movie because Maria and Nick Fury were doing other things. So Maria and Nick Fury aren't actually Skrulls. They were just in that movie. Skrulls were disguising themselves as them because the real people were busy. I know it's kind of confusing. Anyway, the second end credit scene is Wanda. You see her, she's in this remote cabin in the middle of nowhere. It kind of gave me Wolverine origin vibes, and I was getting triggered. If you've ever seen that movie, don't see it. If you've seen it, I'm so sorry that you had to witness that movie. If you haven't seen Wolverine Origins, do not see it. Anyway, it was giving me that kind of vibes in the cabin in the middle of nowhere. But you see her, she's going about her day, she's drinking some tea, and then they go off into her bedroom, and she's actually astral projecting, which means you can have one version of your body doing something, and then another version of it can be doing something else. And she's studying this book. It's called Darkhold, which is another thing that Agatha Harkness was really trying to get in on. So she's studying the Darkhold, astral projecting, and that's how it ends. And that was the recap. I know, again, super long, but I got into it. So what do I think this means for the MCU as a whole? I know for a fact, because this has been stated, this is not just me speculating, Wanda will appear in the next Doctor Strange movie, which Doctor Strange is one of my absolute favorite Marvel movies. Doctor Strange and Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok are pretty much my favorites. But anyway, Doctor Strange is top 3 favorite Marvel movies. So she is going to be featured. Now, a lot of people are like, why didn't Doctor Strange show up? Why didn't he like do something? I think Wanda is either going to be the villain in Doctor Strange, or Doctor Strange is going to need her help with something. Because I don't think Wanda's going to get off easy. A lot of people think that she did, but I don't think she's going to be able to live down what she did to the town. And there's definitely going to be a lot of consequences, and she is definitely way more powerful now. Agatha said that her powers are actually greater than the Sorcerer Supreme, which that's what Doctor Strange is right now. He's a Sorcerer Supreme. So I think he's going to be like, hey, we should team up, or she's going to be, doing destructive things, and he's going to try to stop her. Now, Vision as well, basically Vision has a fight with White Vision. Now, the Vision inside of the sitcom world was actually just a manifestation of Wanda's grief, and he couldn't survive outside of the anomaly. Now, the White Vision is actually the version of Vision that was reanimated by S.W.O.R.D. They were able to use some residual powers from Wanda based on this object that came out of the anomaly that had some of her powers attached to it. They were able to revive Vision, and that was the White Vision. And they have this like fight, this battle at the end of the episode, of the last episode, and it's kind of implied that Anomaly Vision like gave some of his powers to White Vision, so Vision's definitely going to come back. So this definitely sets up a lot for either another season of WandaVision or, obviously Doctor Strange. And Agatha Harkness, I forgot to mention, she, basically Wanda like messes with her brain and makes her think that she's just Agnes. So that's pretty interesting. So moving into what I liked about this and the Easter eggs and things like that. Like I mentioned, every episode up until like the last couple are strictly different sitcoms. Now the first one is like 1950s. The theme song was like the Dick Van Dyke Show. The next one was the 1960s. It had like a Bewitched kind of vibe. Third episode was 70s, sort of like Brady Bunch. And then we had the 80s, which featured sort of kind of like Full House in that era. And then we had like Malcolm in the Middle with the 90s, and then Modern Family and sort of like The Office with the 2000s. So I like that they did that. And each episode that was really sitcom based had a theme song, and the theme song was pretty similar, and the opening credits were pretty much exact replicas of these sitcoms. And you learn, again, I missed this, but you learn that the reason why it's sitcoms is because Wanda learned how to speak English by watching sitcoms with her family. So you have all these like nods to these sitcoms because that was what she used to cope and to learn how to speak English. So it does tie in. It does make sense. It sort of doesn't make sense when you're initially watching it, but then everything clicks and it really does make sense. So I liked that, and I thought it was really clever. And obviously Marvel does things so well, and they just nailed all of that. I thought it was really cool, really well done. And obviously my recap doesn't go into detail of everything, but it was really interesting. And then also with those episodes that are more focused on the sitcoms, they had commercials, and every commercial featured these two characters, the two people, and they also had to do with things that Wanda dealt with in her life. So the first commercial in the 50s is this Stark Industries toaster, and there's like this beeping noise, and it goes off and it's super, super quick, and then it stops. So that's kind of nodding to the Stark bomb that hit her family's house, and they're kind of waiting for this beep that never happens. The second one, that's in the 60s, is this Strucker watch, and Strucker is the name of the man who experimented on Wanda and Pietro. So again, it's like time's up, and inside of the watch there's actually a Hydra logo. So again, Strucker, he was part of Hydra. He experimented on Wanda and Pietro. Episode 3 with the 70s is for a product called Hydra Soak, which Hydra, the evil people from S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's all about, cleaning yourself and, getting all soaked up. Now, this is a direct reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Agent Coulson talked about how Hydra made soap that controlled your mind. So it's kind of like a nod to that, and again, like cleaning up yourself. The commercial from the 80s, which was probably the one where I was like, ooh, they went there, is for a brand of paper towels called Lagos paper towels, and it's all about cleaning up messes that you didn't know that you made, and you didn't know that you made it, or you didn't mean to make it. And Lagos, obviously, is the name of the country where, at the beginning of Captain America Civil War, Wanda and all of them were trying to go after Crossbones. Again, I go into a little too much detail. But anyway, she accidentally kills a bunch of people in Lagos. And so the paper towels, it's like cleaning up the mess, and the mess is like red Kool-Aid, and it's like cleaning up blood. And yeah, they went there. That was the one where I was like, ooh, that really hits home. I can't believe they went there. So again, yeah, all these like commercials have to do with like her life. The one for the 90s was a yogurt commercial, and it showcases this guy sitting on an island, and this shark comes up and like brings him yogurt, and the guy's like dying. And the guy can't open the yogurt. He's like too weak. And he's basically just like sitting on this island forever holding this can of yogurt. And it's like really kind of disturbing. And I think it kind of talks about how Wanda is in this isolated thing, this isolated anomaly. And she can't leave. She can't really help herself. And she's stranded there. And that's kind of what I think that one's about. And the commercial for the 2000s is for an antidepressant medication. Clearly a nod to how Wanda is depressed. She's grieving. She's in this horrible state. And that whole episode, she's really, really just not really herself. And she's really struggling and having, a mental breakdown pretty much. I'll also mention that the beginning of every episode, they say previously on WandaVision, and it's Wanda's voice. And as every episode goes by, her voice gets less and less excited. She starts off saying previously on WandaVision, and then at the end it's like previously on WandaVision. So it really does show her starting off like in this happy high place and then spiraling down to depression. And there's also nods to the episodes dealing with different stages of grief. So there's like, anger, acceptance, denial, and all of that. And that's really prevalent through a lot of the episodes as well. So I think overall, this show was just really clever. It was really well done. I think all of the little Easter eggs they put in there, and all of the little, nods to the other movies, and how this show is really about grief. And it's really about what happens when you lose someone, and how your emotions can really affect you. I think Wanda is such an amazing character. I always really liked her. She was always one of my favorites. She is still my favorite, but she was always one of my favorite characters. And I'm not just saying that to be trendy. I know a lot of people think that I just like Harley Quinn because it's trendy. I liked Harley Quinn long before Suicide Squad, and I really do like Wanda. I've always really liked her, and I think she's definitely one of the most damaged characters. When we look at these characters, even Tony Stark, he clearly had PTSD. They really deal with that in Iron Man, and there's a lot of these characters who have such awful things happen to them, but they don't really get to explore their grief, and they don't really explore their, day-to-day, how they're coping with things. And I think this show was really clever. It was really interesting. And that, talking about like mental health and all of that, it really did remind me of Iron Man 3, where Tony's going through it. He has a mental breakdown. He has panic attacks. He's really, really grieving and really having an emotional trauma from the events of the Avengers. And they really explore mental health in this show, and I really like it. So overall, I really, really loved WandaVision. I highly recommend that you watch it. If you've already watched it, rewatch it. If you didn't catch all of those little Easter eggs that I talked about, watch the new Rockstars video. Again, I will link their YouTube channel in the description. They have a bunch of videos about WandaVision and so many other amazing shows. I'm really excited to see where they take this character. I'm really excited to see, Jimmy Woo come back and other things, and Monica Rambeau. I'm excited to see, how this ties into Doctor Strange. Where is Doctor Strange? What was he doing? Doctor Strange, where are you? Also, people want an X-Files type TV show with Jimmy Woo and Darcy, and I'm totally for that. So, Marvel, if you want to make that show, I definitely would watch that. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing about WandaVision and some Easter eggs. I hope you learned something new about WandaVision. If you haven't seen it, I hope this inspires you to watch it. And It's just an amazing show. I really, really recommend it. And before I sign off, I want to let you know that you can listen to this podcast on Anchor. You can also listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you don't listen on YouTube, I actually have a video version of this podcast, so I'm on the screen right now. If you're watching YouTube, hi. And if you don't watch it on YouTube, if you just listen to it on the audio version, you can't actually see what I look like on YouTube. So all of those links are in the description as well, and they should be in the description of my my podcast on whatever player you're listening to, so you can check out every single platform. I do try to post these episodes twice a month. Sometimes it's once a month because things happen and things get busy. But I've really enjoyed posting these podcasts, and I hope that you have enjoyed them as well. I'm also taking requests. If there's anything specific that you want me to chat about on the podcast, I am more than happy to do an episode on something that you're interested in. That's all for this episode. As always, stay safe, stay classy, and I will chat again with you soon. Goodbye.